Hello and welcome to another episode here on my channel. My name is ChaosMole and today we want to cover what is Armored Core and more importantly, what do we know about Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. I will mix it up a little bit with the big interview Miyazaki gave to IGN so that we are getting a lot more information about what we can expect in 6, and then I will compare that to all the other Armored Core games which came first. Two things before we jump into this though. First things first, what do you know is probably the first question you have. While I have been an Armored Core player since the PlayStation 1 version, the very first one, I love the series. I have played nearly every game because, believe it or not, even though there's only 6 like mainline Armored Core games, there are tons of like side ones. Especially what they did is they had Armored Core 4 and then they had Armored Core for Answer, or Armored Core 5 and then we had Armored Core Verdict Day. Right, so they always did something in that regard, like a standalone, not expansion, but like a standalone game, which was a little bit smaller, or sometimes it was even as big as the main game. It was kind of crazy. So I know a lot about the Armored Core series, and I've been playing the game for decades. And of course, I'm really looking forward to this new game. Maybe you have even seen my reaction video on my React channel. If you haven't yet, you will find the link down below in the video description, and tens of thousands of people have already watched it, which is kind of crazy. So thank you very much for that. But let's answer the question, what is Armored Core? And I sometimes will call it Armored Core. That is not how you spell it. That's just me being a dingus and picking something up decades ago and just rolling with it. Fair warning. So, what is the game? Well, it is a From Software game, so that means it takes a lot of the gameplay elements you have seen in other From Software games. And yes, that means the Souls games, like Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Elden Ring, right? They take ideas from that, or, well, the other way around. Dark Souls and the other games took like quite a bit of the ideas they had from the Armored Core series. And then, of course, Armored Core took a lot of the ideas from previous From Software games. It's sometimes crazy when you realize how long From Software has been developing games over the decades. And so there are similarities, but there are also a lot of differences. This is not another Souls game. It's not another Dark Souls. This is not another Elden Ring. And it will become very clear as we are going through this interview. So the first one is when Miyazaki says that the essential direction of Armored Core 6 was to go back and take a good look at the core concept of Armored Core and what made that series special. And that makes kind of sense because even though the Souls series was super successful, Armored Core was always in the sidelines. It never became as successful as any of the Dark Souls games, and of course leaving alone Elden Ring, which was unfortunate. But they also tried a lot over the years. They changed a lot over the years. Like we had, when you were playing Armored Core 4 or even Armored Core 4 Answer, those games are quite different. And then you were playing Armored Core 5, there it is, the first Armored Core 5, it's a completely different game, because they try to make it more massively multiplayer-esque in the 5th one. Like, they have been experimenting to what they want to do with this series for decades now, and I'm hope they finally find their rhythm, right? And so we wanted to take the assembly aspect, assembling and customizing your own mech, your AC, and then being able to exact a high level of control over the assembled mech. So we wanted to take those two core concepts and re-examine those in our modern environment. I think that's pretty good. Like, if you want to have a little bit of an idea of how this assembling and customizing your AC, your mech, is actually going, check out Armored Core 4 Answers. It gives you highly customizable maps. You can go down to like even like voltage and all that. Like you can go crazy on how you want to tweak your core to your own specifications and what you want to play your core as, right? And they sometimes had that in their games, then they sometimes removed it from their games. And again, like as I said before, they really experimented with a lot of the core concepts, pun not intended, when it came to Armored Core, right? Like they experimented a lot, and I'm glad that they are looking back at it and they want to bring this highly customizable mech system back. And also fast. The game can be very fast, highly maneuverable, right? So let's go through this interview a little bit. I have already read it, so you don't have to do it. And I would say we are going to go through like the main points he was talking about. So the first big question is, will this game be closer to the Soulsborne games than the series has been in the past? And his answer is no. We don't make the conscious effort to try to direct it to more towards Soulsborne type games. Here's the thing, like as I said before, there were always a slight similarity to Soulsborne games before. There was customizable RPG kind of things in the game right from the beginning. It was always there. Big boss fights have been there for quite a while, then disappeared again, then they came back again. Has been there before. Same goes with difficulty. The difficulty of Armored Core was relatively close to what you would expect in a Dark Souls game or even Elden Ring at this point, right? By the way, when I say Dark Souls games, I also mean Elden Ring, Soulsborne, right? And they are not really trying to make this another Soulsborne game. There will be, of course, a lot of overlapping ideas because, well, it's from the same developers, right? But it will be its own thing. And they are also talking about that the main crew who is working on the new core game was working on Sekiro, and they're asking if there are like some ideas from Sekiro in the Armored Core games, and he is saying that no, not really, right? There might be some gameplay elements that by continuing an attack, even the strongest enemy, the force of impact can break the enemy's posture and inflict a large amount of damage, a critical hit, right? So they want to have fast combat, but does it play like Sekiro? No. And then they're talking about counter mechanics. It's not really there. Like it's not too important. Like they did hung up quite a bit on like the whole Sekiro part, but there is not really any Sekiro in this. They're also talking about the weapons which will be in the game. There will be guns, ordnance, missiles, but there will also be some melee weapons, as there always has been. Armored Core games always had melee weapons. Not as dominant, but there were always some kind of melee weapons in the game. Yes. Now they are talking about accessibility, for example, friendlier checkpoints and friendly summons, like in the Elden Ring series, we will see something like this, right? And he will probably see that happening in Armored Core 6. But what is very important to note here is that Armored Core 6 will not be an Elden Ring. This is what they're basically talking about here in the next few questions, is it will not be an Elden Ring. That means it will not be open world. Armored Core was always mission-based. And that will be the case here again. So we will go through mission 1, mission 2, mission 3, mission 4. You prepare in between the missions. Then you are jumping into the mission and you are doing that mission. Keep in mind, the missions can be quite large. Like, they had previous levels where a mission could take sometimes even an hour, because they had like large areas you had to cover with multiple mission objectives, boss fights, and enemies, of course, you had to fight. And they were quite ruthless. You screw that up, well, you had to do it again from the beginning. So I'm hoping they're putting some checkpoints in there because again, like some missions could be quite ruthless, right? Then they're talking also about the lore, and this is the question I'm seeing quite a bit. Do you need to play the previous Armored Core games before you can play 6? And he actually explains it right here in the interview that no, you don't, because it's kind of a reboot. They call it 6, but it will have its own story. It will have its own characters, and it will play in a time which is completely disconnected from what we have seen before. So they could have probably just called it Armored Core, like a lot of developers and publishers are doing nowadays, right? Instead of following the numbers, they're just doing a reset and start from the beginning. But that's not what they wanted to do, and this is why they're calling it 6. But in itself, it is its own story, own area, own characters, and it's basically a reboot. Should you play the other Armored Core games? As a long fan of Armored Core, no. As I said, the previous games, they did a lot of experimenting. The one game I really recommend is For Answer, because I think it's one of the best, and they really figured out what they wanted to do there. Plus, it was pretty close to what you would call a Soulsborne. It's not a Soulsborne, but it is relatively close to it, right? So I think for everyone who wants to have a look at the Armored Core series, For Answer is the best one to stop there. But the reality is also, it had a lot of bugs. It had a lot of performance issues. Like, there's a boss fight. If you were using a specific weapon against that certain boss fight, the game is basically dumping down to like 2 FPS. So that's still a thing. They are old games. And they are definitely those type of games where From Software hasn't figured out yet what they want to do with the series. Where they are still trying to find their ways, and productivity was different. The amount of money they had at their disposal was very different, right? And even Dark Souls didn't really exist at the point yet, or not as big as it then became, leaving alone Elden Ring. But yeah, like, just, you are not missing out when you are just waiting for 6. Let's just say that. They are also planning to have a versus mode similar to the previous Armored Core titles, where you'll be able to customize your mech and take the fully customized mech into battle with others, but we will reveal more details about this in a later date. I assume they will also put like a point limit or something in. This is what they always had. They had those arenas where you could fight against each other, and then there were also like point limits in place, right? And we will see how that exactly goes, but I'm looking forward to some multiplayer. Should be fun. Yeah. Again, they were asking if this would be an open world exploration game, and no, like we talked about this, right? Nope, it will not. And this is a complete reset. like as I said before, right? So you don't have to wonder about that. This is where he talks a little bit about how the games have impacted him as a designer. They're talking about the difficulty, and he's saying that, of course, with Armored Core 6, what we wanted to focus on was this really intense and tough mecha battles. We have generally tried to keep it on the challenging side, but it's not to say that it is a flat difficulty line throughout. We wanted to have some nice tempo changes and some nice balance to the difficulty and the level of challenge. It can be very depending on the mission type. It depends on the enemies you are coming up against in those missions, and it depends on how you want to assemble your mech. So very much like the old Armored Core games, right? Like there were missions I remember were super easy, where some of my friends were just like, dude, I cannot beat this mission. I just can't. And most of the time, the answer was, check your mech. Check what you have equipped. Check what you are utilizing, right? Maybe this is not the best choice for this mission, right? And that's what they are doing here again, right? But the big boss battles are already back. So we will have big bass battles again, which were fantastic. By the way, even if you're not playing the Armored Core games, best advice I can give, check out the music. It's not on Spotify as far as I know. I think only 5 is on Spotify. The rest is on YouTube. Fantastic music, typical From Software stuff. Absolute bangers. So yeah, definitely check that out. Again, they're talking about how you will upgrade your character, how it is an RPG at the core. Again, pun not intended. And yes, your mechs can actually move and fly, like the previous Armored Core games. And what they are trying to do is they're trying the parts of Armored Core which worked, put this into a 2022 gameplay, and also put far more money behind it. And so whenever people are asking, is this a Dark Souls game with mechs? Depending on who you ask. Some people will say yes. I'm definitely more on the yes side. And some people will clearly say no. Because it is far too nuanced, really, to declare it as a Soulsborne game. There are similarities. There are definitely some moments where you go like, oh, like Dark Souls. Okay. Oh, like Elden Ring. Okay. Right? You will find those moments in Armored Core games. 100%. But is it really a Soulsborne game? No. Especially the mission type gameplay, I think, makes a huge difference. That you have to overcome the mission. You cannot just go somewhere else. Right? Like, I don't want to say you cannot farm the currency to upgrade your mech further, because that was possible in some of the previous games, and then some others it wasn't. But I assume it will be possible in the newest one. So there is a little bit of farming you can do, but you cannot just say, okay, this boss fight is just kicking my ass, I go somewhere else. You can't. You have to do this mission to move forward, right? So, yeah, lots of similarities to the Soulsborne games, but it is still its own game. And it seems like they want to put all of this in a 2022 gameplay environment. I'm definitely looking forward to it. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and also to subscribe if you're new to the channel. I will probably do some more Armored Core videos in the future, and I will try to learn not to say Armored instead of Armored Core. Again, I have picked it up decades ago and it would take ages till I get rid of it completely. So sorry for that again. But I'm really looking forward to it. And the moment we get some real first gameplay, you will definitely also find it on my channel. And over the time, I will definitely make some more videos about Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. Stay safe.